Do you ever feel like you'd like to escape?
Let me preface any answer to that remark by giving my feeling about jails. Somebody asked me, that question's been asked me before, would you want to escape? Have you ever planned to escape? And if my attorney was here, he'd say, I object, Your Honor. Mr. Bundy is being asked a question, an attempt is being made to ask Mr. Bundy to incriminate himself. But let me try to get my way out of that one. The Utah State Prison, as you know, is surrounded by several barbed wire fences and has many guards and towers, and they've got dogs that run around there, and they've got bars in the cells, and they've got count procedures. And what do you think that's all for? That's to keep the man in there. Now, does anyone think that if they took those fences down and took those dogs away and those guns away, all those guys would stay? Sure they'd go. The very reason for prison, the very assumption of all those bars and all that barbed wire is that if it's not there, those guys are going to leave. And I swear to God, every man in that prison at one time or another thinks about going, wishes he wasn't there, and wishes he could fly over those fences. I've dreamed about flying over those fences. I've dreamed about climbing over those fences and tunneling under those fences. With every other man in there, I've dreamed about being free.
Welcome back to another episode of Infamous. My name is Harmon, and today's episode is back-to-back to the other Ted Bundy episode. If you missed that, it'll be at the end of this video. You can click on it and check it out. But this is basically the second part to the Ted Bundy episode that I did earlier. I wanted to do a separate episode because these two events where he escaped jail and escaped the courthouse, they happened 2 years after all the other murders that I discussed in the other video. Ted Bundy escaped from the courthouse, and he also escaped from the jail. Two different events within a 6-month span of each other. The first escape he did was June 1977, and then his second escape was December 30th, 1977. So 6 months, he escaped twice from custody after he was arrested and subsequently charged with kidnapping and murder. To give you guys a better perspective of when Ted Bundy was here at the Aspen, Colorado courthouse, I'll give you the backstory. So Ted Bundy was arrested in Granger, Utah for speeding and I think blowing through some stop signs, and he finally was arrested. They found tools and gloves and ropes and everything else in his VW Beetle. He posted bail and was released the next day. They gathered more evidence, and he was eventually charged with kidnapping. Thanks to one of his last victims who actually was able to escape, she was able to testify against him, and that's why he was charged and convicted kidnapping case in Utah, and he was given 1 to 15 years sentence for that. Meanwhile, after about a year or a year and a half, they finally found evidence to convict Ted Bundy of the Karen Campbell murder. So Bundy was moved back to Aspen, Colorado, pending the other criminal charges, the murder of Karen Campbell. He was moved back here in January 1977. On June 7th, 1977, Bundy was in the courthouse working on his case as he was acting as his own lawyer. And since he was acting as his own lawyer, he was giving access to the law library, which was inside the courthouse. It was on the second floor. They decided not to shackle him, like his legs or arms, so he was able to walk in there freely, no shackles whatsoever. And all they did was have a guard or two outside the door, but no one inside with him. So, of course, Bundy planned his escape. He jumped out the second-story window about 25 feet off the ground and took off. He hid in the mountains for about 6 days, breaking into cabins, getting food and water and whatever else, and they finally located him back in town, as I believe he stole another car, and that's when they found him back in town. 25 feet is a long ways down, especially onto uneven surface, and I'm sure, you know, there's rocks and trees and stuff like that. I think I heard that he either busted his ankle or he injured his ankle, I think, in some way when he jumped out the window, which makes perfect sense because it's a long way down. I just talked to an older gentleman inside the courthouse, and he was saying that the actual window, the law office library, was on the back side of the building here. It wasn't the front. So I will try my best to see if I can at least give you guys a better perspective of where it was. Also wanted to mention that the Aspen Courthouse here, it's only about 20 to 25 minutes away from Snowmass Village, where Bundy abducted and killed Karen Campbell. So I don't know, it's kind of ironic in a way that all these places are so close together, and that he was not that far away from where he ended up, you know, abducting and killing Karen. So in a way, I don't know, I guess it's just interesting how closely related things are. Ted Bundy's first escape only lasted 6 days, from June 7th to June 13th, 1977. After Ted Bundy's first escape, he was rearrested and taken to Garfield County Jail, which is here in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And they put him in the jail here as they were waiting for him to be sentenced for some other crimes that happened. But, of course, Ted Bundy being Ted Bundy, he did not want to stick around, so he devised a plan to escape the jail. And honestly, it is a very, very interesting story, and how he did it. It sounds just like you would see on like Prison Break, the TV show, or a movie or something. It's amazing. Not that I condone anything he did, but the way he went about trying to escape is, you know, it's pretty phenomenal. So the way he was able to escape was partly due to the fact that the jail had some outdated stuff on the ceiling that were old and were not secured. There was a grate and a light fixture on the ceiling that was not fully secured. I think they were about to replace it or something like that. And basically, Ted Bundy took advantage of that situation. But first, before he could do that, he needed to lose weight in order to fit through the opening on the ceiling.
Terry, Bundy told Florida police that his escape from the jail in Glenwood Springs was no spur-of-the-moment thing. It was carefully planned over the course of 9 months and executed with equal care. Bundy described his escape with the same kind of arrogant nonchalance which has characterized his attitude from his first arrest to his emergence as a mass murder suspect. He was locked in an all-steel jail for 9 months, and he claims that during that time he got to know the cell better than the jailers. He got hold of a hacksaw blade, he refuses to say how, and cut through a welded light fixture plate into the ceiling. Then he began crawling around between the ceiling and the roof, looking for a likely way out. On the evening of December 30th, he was in that crawl space above a room where the resident jailer and his wife were making plans to go to a movie.
So over the course of 4 to 5 months when he was there in jail, he lost an average of 20 to 25 pounds. And even his lawyer, when he visited him in jail, took notice and said, "Wow, what's going on, Ted? How come you're losing all this weight?" But none of the jail staff wondered why he was losing so much weight. After Ted Bundy lost 20 to 25 pounds, he was ready. So basically, he carved an opening in the cell ceiling where the light fixture was and made it a little bit bigger so that way he could fit through. He apparently also arranged some books and pillows on his bed to make it look like he was still there, still sleeping. Kind of like how they escaped from Alcatraz, the famous escape in 1962. From Alcatraz, they used kind of the same setup, so it's kind of funny. I don't know exactly how long it took for him to like carve out part of the ceiling, if it took a few days or a week or whatever, but none of the jail staff noticed, and he was able to fit through the opening. Once he got through the opening in the ceiling, he crawled through basically the duct space, basically that's in the ceiling, and crawled through basically like the crawl space up in the ceiling. Apparently made it through to the jailer's apartment. So the jailer who was in charge had an apartment attached to the jail, and he crawled through the ceiling.
Bundy says he wasn't sure whether the whole deal was a setup, meaning he could be gunned down the moment he tried to run, or the opportunity of a lifetime. In his words, I said, well, let's see, if they're waiting outside to blow me away or waiting on me, I'll do it. Bundy huddled between the ceiling and the roof, making that decision. Quoting now, so I debated a full half an hour, and that's a luxury. Finally, he decided to go for it. He dropped down into a linen closet after the jailer had left for the movie, walked out the front door of the jail into what he calls a beautiful Colorado snowy night. He stole a car, but the car got bogged down in Vail Pass. Says Bundy, I was more afraid of freezing to death than I was of being caught. But a passing motorist gave him some help, and Bundy was soon on a bus to Denver. A few hours later, he was on a plane to Chicago. Bundy escaped on a Friday night, the night before last New Year's Eve. He wasn't missed until shortly after noon Saturday. By that time, Bundy bragged to investigators, he was in Chicago, and, quote, I think I'd had 3 gin and tonics.
Ken, something puzzles me about all this. How was Bundy able to be gone from his cell from Friday night until noon Saturday and never be missed?
Well, during the week before his escape, he'd established a pattern of telling the jailers that he was too ill to be able to eat his morning meal. So when the meal train came through that morning and Bundy did not get out of bed for breakfast, no one thought anything was strange about it at all.
His second escape here in Glenwood Springs from the county jail was from December 30th, 1977, when he first initially escaped, and he finally was apprehended on February 15th, 1978, down in Tallahassee, Florida.